Gentlemen, privileged to be here. Thank you very much for the gracious invitation that you've extended to Jeff and to I to share last night and this afternoon. Thank you to Pastor Jonathan for the privilege of being at this pulpit. It's been 39 years. I checked it since we talked, since I stood here, and that makes me old. You all shook your head, yes. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. For many years, our family, my family, looked forward to annual summer vacation at Fundy National Park. We loved going down there to the beauty of the place, the cleanliness of the grounds, the great trails, the great waterfalls and pools. All right, who pressed the button for the horn? You want out of here now, don't you? We swam in the pools and so on. But to get there, how many of you have ever been to Fundy Park? All right, so a few of you understand that to get there, the uphill ride to that campground is atrocious. And we towed a 4,000-pound tent trailer with 5 people in a little Buick Century with a 3.1 V6 that did not have the opportunity to come with a trailer hitch. And we filled the trailer full. And we'd get to Moncton, down through Riverview, down past the Fundy Rocks. We'd get to Alma, and we'd stop. We'd put Josh and his 2 sisters out. I'd ask my wife to get out. I didn't put her out. I asked her to get out. And the next step would be to turn, even though it was July or August and hot, I'd turn the heat all the way to the high side, turn the fan on wide open to bleed heat from the motor. And then I'd hold that car to the floor. I'd get a big run on. You could hear the tires howling going around the lower turns, but by the time you were halfway up, the car was barely moving. There was a spot to pull over, open the hood, steam, hiss, heat waves shimmering. And I'd sit there 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then I'd shut the hood, start it up, wide open across that little parking lot, back onto the road, right to the top. Unhook the tent trailer, go all the way back down, pick up my wife and family. We missed 2 years out of 20 camping at Fundy Park. It was an awesome time. And when it was time to leave, you'd put that little car in low range and stand on the brakes all the way back down the hill, and then drive back to Truro to my brother's garage and say, could you change the brakes? They're warped, they're shaking, it's terrible. And we got away with it. We got away with it. Incredible. It's amazing how many things you can get away with. And one year, our sister-in-law from Prince Edward Island, my wife's older sister, she came over, and I met her at the bottom. Walked down, took a long time, met her at the bottom, got in with her and her children. Old Ford Aerostar van, we're going up that hill, and I looked over, and all of a sudden there's a light on the dash flashing. Oil, oil, oil. And I said, Lynn, the oil engine heat is going. She said, yeah, does it all the time. We just kept on going. Have you ever lived that way? You know, as a pastor, as a ministry person, as a person with responsibilities in life, have you lived that way where you can just keep on going? You can pop the hood, let off a little extra steam, turn the heat up, put a few people out of your life and get by and get away with it. You can just keep on going. So I live that way. Do you? Ministry is much like that, has been so much of the time. So about 1.5 years ago, the guy who has been my associate and partner for 15.5 years said, day after tomorrow, I'm getting on the plane to go candidate in Alberta. It was like a divorce. I think. I haven't been through one of those yet, but it was like a divorce. I couldn't imagine living without him at People's Church in Truro. And so I went to see a man who I knew, who had been youth pastor with Bruce and I at People's Church. You might have heard of him. His name's Caleb Kelly, over at Crossroads in our town. And I went to Crossroads Baptist Church, and I said, Caleb, what am I going to do? And he said just what I didn't need to hear. he stroked my ego. And he said, Ken, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I think it might have been Frank, and he said, if anybody can do it, Ken can. Oh man, that just stoked the fire. I'm going to prove that I can. So when Bruce pulled out, I just took over the things that Bruce had been doing on top of the things that I'd been doing. And I took over the college and career program, and I took over several other things. By the way, Bruce's wife was our secretary. She left with him. I couldn't imagine her leaving me for him, but she did. And so all kinds of things suddenly fell on my plate, and I discovered I'm in this building all alone. I'm trying to carry on what the three of us used to oversee, and I'm failing miserably. But I'm not going to tell anybody, because I'm just going to put some more wood in the furnace and make it a little hotter, maybe 7 times hotter than it's ever been before, and I'm going to get this done and prove that I can do it. Have you ever felt that way? And then God did some things to say, I'm going to set you aside. And he did. I never expected that. Should I have? I've been thinking about 3 people. Let me give you the first one. I found him in Luke chapter 18. You don't have to turn there. Don't turn there. Don't open your Bibles. I brought this up because it looks like a Bible. I forgot mine. Don't open your Bibles. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax. Anybody ever heard this before? Okay, good. It is in the Bible. The Pharisee stood and he prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men. Have you ever come to that conclusion? Oh man, I'm the cream of the crop. I'm the best there is. I'm not saying that I consciously thought that, but I thought I could do it. That's not an evidence of humility. I found this second guy in Matthew 26:33. The first guy, that Pharisee, he really doesn't resonate with me because he's a Pharisee and I'm a friend of Jesus. And Jesus is a friend of mine, so I can't relate. I'm not like other men. That's not me. Matthew 26:33. Even if every other human being alive denies you, I will never deny you. Cactus, man, I'm great. I'm awesome. I'm incredible. I can do this. Oh, we know about his brashness and his overconfidence, his ability to open his mouth when he shouldn't and stick his foot in really deep. That's not really me. But then I landed on this third guy, and this third guy is me. Oh, he's me. He's an Old Testament dude. 1 Kings 19. King Ahab told his wife Jezebel about all that Elijah had done and how he'd executed all the prophets with the sword. And so Jezebel sent a messenger to that guy Elijah and said, so let all of my gods do to you, and more also, if by this time tomorrow your life isn't like one of those dead guys. That's paraphrased. And when Elijah saw that, he rose and ran for his life. Yeah, I like to run. Acquiesce is my word. Get out of there fast, hide. And he went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. And the best way to cope is to be alone. We all know that, so let's just isolate from everybody. And he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and he came and sat down under a broom tree. Are you kind of being swept along with this? You get that broom tree thing? And he prayed that he might die. Why'd you run? You could have been dead 2 days ago back home with Jezebel, right? But you come way out here and did all this to spare your life to ask God to kill you. He prayed that he might die. It's enough, Lord. Take away my life, for I am not better than all the others. Or in his words, I am not better than my fathers. What a wonderful reality to discover. I am no better. We are fallen mankind, redeemed by the wonderful shed blood of a Savior who's loved us. We are not better. We are forgiven. We are recipients of incredible grace. A blessed gift from God to come to the end of ourselves and discover that we too are weak and faltering, limited in what we are able to do. We're insufficient without the all-sufficient one. Who was that man that said in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, I've become all things to all people that I might by all means win some? Do you know it took me a lot of years of pastoral ministry to discover that Paul was not offering counseling or scheduling advice when he said that? He was saying that as far as his rights were concerned, he's free from all men, but because of his love for men, he'd gladly limit his rights for their sake, modify his habits, preferences, lifestyles. It caused someone to stumble, be offended, hindered from the faith in the Lord, he'd turn away from it. But it's not saying keep busy 24/7 or you're not serving Christ. So what happens when we who know the Lord believe that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us and do them all the time? One of my commentaries actually says, at that point, we do not need to worry about being given more than we can handle. I don't believe that. Do you? Have you never been given more than you can handle? I disagree. We don't need to be concerned about our pace. We don't need to be concerned about the size of the plate we carry. Yes, we do. We're all different. We have different things in our lives that are strengths and weaknesses. We're at different points in our lives. What you can handle may be more than I can handle. Someone else may be able to handle a great deal more than either of us. The divine capacity that is yours and that is mine through God is incredible, but we are limited. And we don't want to admit when our oil light is on and the temperature gauge is in the nuclear zone. And if we were only more spiritual, we'd be able to handle more pressure. That's a lie. I've just got to push on through this. It'll get better on the other side. Another lie. The outcome of that may be predictable for the average man, but not for you and me. Another lie. I spent a few years boarding in a home where there were students from Newfoundland. And I loved overhearing their Newfoundland music. It was not Christian music, but I loved it. And I commented on it regularly. So for Christmas, they bought me music, a CD of Alabama. What's that got to do with Newfoundland? I had no idea. You're not even old enough to know what Alabama was, are you? One of the songs still resonates in my head every once in a while. Alabama used to sing, I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really got to do is live and die, and I'm in a hurry, and I don't know why. Well, I don't like the theology of that, but I do understand that I'm too busy to actually pay attention to the speed limit, slow down for the turn, check the map when I'm not sure where I'm going, and my tires are good, so the icy road shouldn't slow me. I'm not like other men. Are you? Trouble ahead. Isn't it wonderful that God didn't call you and I into ministry because he was finished working on us? You, me, these projects are not complete. I'm not called to pastor only because of what God can do through me for others, but also for what God can do in me in that setting. And the blue suit with the red S doesn't fit just yet. When we lived in Ontario 20 years ago, some of our young family from PEI wanted to come and visit, but their parents didn't want them driving that far alone. So after family vacation in the Maritimes, we're headed home and we're taking 4 teenagers with us. They're driving their own car. I think it was a Honda Civic, if I remember correctly. To save money and time, we drove all night rather than get a hotel. To stay awake, the young man driving that car, his name was Kyle, drank one Red Bull after another, nonstop, one chased the other all night long. 20 hours later, we arrived in Hepworth, Ontario, and unloaded both cars, and everyone in and crashed in the beds. Except Kyle, he sat on the couch for a day and a half, eyes wide open, staring off into nothing. If you asked him something, he answered before you could get the question out. He just fit right back in your face with the answer. And then 2 days later, we headed off to the beach to show those people Sauble Beach, that beautiful place, but you couldn't wait, Kyle. He crashed. He slept for a day and a half. It's going to catch up. One way or the other, it's going to happen. Is it possible to worship like Mary and work like Martha at the same time? Can we do both? Or let me put it in my own words. Doesn't God understand my time constraints? Don't my rushed encounters with him, with my wife, my family, my friends, my church, and with others, don't these efforts to include them mean even more because of my busy schedule? Was your wife, your husband, your spouse ever impressed because you made an effort to include them? If it's an effort, we're in trouble. During a year of travel, I had the privilege of visiting numerous churches. I visited a Fellowship Baptist Church in Melbourne Square before Bruce Kaiser. I visited Bruce Kaiser in Quebec that year, but anyway. Pastor of that church said after 2 weeks of speaking under every circumstance possible, in Awana, on the radio, on Sunday, everything, I'm going to treat you to a game of golf. Very kind of him. Hated golf then, still hate it now, but very kind of him. It was my first golf game. So Mark Breeden and I went to the golf course. We got out of his car. He still had his tie on. His pocket was full of a Bible and tracts and a couple of pens and, I don't know, pocket knife and a compass and emergency blanket or whatever else. It was all there. And he had borrowed a set of clubs for me, which were very short, too short, but who cares? We're playing golf. And without any instruction to me, he just teed off, picked up his clubs, and began to run. And as he's running away, he hollered back over his shoulder for me to hurry up and hit. We got to go. So I dropped a ball on that little wooden stick, hit it for all I was worth, heard it ring off a few trees, and we started running. And we ran the whole thing. In fact, when we approached a green that was occupied, we skipped putting, skipped the hole, and teed off on the fairway on the other side to get ahead of those people. It was wonderful. We accomplished a round of golf in what might have been a record time. He did it all for me. He paid for it for me, and I hated it. So here are some things that I had my attention drawn to by a friend I haven't met yet. The ancient Israelites were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, many of the pharaohs, for 400 years. And then under the leadership of Moses, they were set free, God's power. On Mount Sinai, God gave them 10 commandments, and the fourth decree says this in Deuteronomy 5:12. Let me read it for you. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God, and in it you shall do no work. Not you, not your son, not your daughter, not your male servant, your female servant, your ox, your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Your male servant and your female servant are to rest as well as you. And remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there. Now, historians tell us that until this time, no civilization had ever given ordinary working people a regular day off. And the gift of the Sabbath, way back in the beginning, was a unique, unprecedented gift, reminding the Hebrews that they were no longer slaves to the pharaohs, Their lives were no longer defined by making bricks and mixing mortar. They had a new identity. They were the people of God. And we have a new identity too. We are not slaves. Our lives are not to be defined by our ability to produce or succeed. Our value has already been established by our Maker at the cross. We have infinite worth not because of what we do, but because of who we are. We are God's sons and daughters. A fellow by the name of Ron Hutchcraft said something that I've never forgotten. It's hard to clean a fish before you catch it. We're loved by our Maker before we do anything. That ought to liberate us from enslavement to the God of work. We are human beings, beloved sons and daughters of God, not human doings, slaves of some harsh taskmaster. We don't earn our rest. We don't deserve our rest. We receive it as a gift from God. Think of this. Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. The heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he'd done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he'd done. He blessed the seventh day, made it holy, and on it God rested from all his work. What day did he create man? Day 6. Which means our first full day on the planet was a day off. Isn't that great? God created us to rest before we work. From the Hebrew perspective, the day begins at midnight, which means we sleep before we work. Since the resurrection of Christ, we begin our week with Sunday, which means we worship before we work. Except that doesn't apply to you and me, does it? We work while they worship. Or should we both be able to? How do we make up for that day? We must have rest. Great things happen while we're at rest. Do you know that Adam was given his life partner Eve while he was in a deep sleep, which the Lord had caused? Somebody said he never had good rest since, but that's not necessarily true. Do you know that Solomon received his tremendous gift of wisdom while he was sleeping? 1 Kings 13 says, then he awoke. God gave him the gift. Joseph, Mary's husband, heard his most important message from God while he was asleep, and then he woke up. In Genesis chapter 15, when God gives that great covenant to Abram, I want you to think about it for a moment. Verse 9, God said to Abram, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. So he brought those 5 things to him, and he cut them in 2 down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he didn't cut the birds in 2. 8 pieces. Separated by distance and put out there as God prescribed. And then it says in verse 11, when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Oh my goodness, I've got to keep these vultures at bay. I'm constantly running between 8 offering stations. I've got no time to eat, no time to drink, no time to play, no time to go fishing, no time for my wife, my family, for visitation, service, sermon preparation. I can't stop. It'll all be ruined and God will be angry with me. I've got to run between these 4 things. And then it says this, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a horror of great darkness fell upon him. This is New King James. I don't know what a horror of great darkness is, but I've tasted it. Have you? Here's how it looks for me. You wake up and you're doing a funeral you're unprepared for. In your head, you're dreaming this, but there you are, and you're not ready. You wake up and you're doing a wedding you haven't prepared for. You're in a service you're unprepared. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's listening for what you're going to say, and you've got nothing. Oh God, take me now. It's horrifying. And then you wake up in your own bed and you certainly aren't rested. Verse 13, God said to Abraham, know this certainly. And he makes some promises, and then he says this, and you will go to your fathers in peace. That's a great covenant God made with Abraham. Do you know what Abraham had to promise? Nothing. God said, I will. You just sleep. Is it possible that we run ourselves far more ragged than God would ever want us to? It all sounds so wrong. Sometimes it's even ridiculous when we assess our lives. Our little ship is facing a severe onslaught of wind, weather, activity, waves, water. We're overwhelmed and we feel like we're sinking. And where's Jesus? He's asleep. He doesn't even care. Because God never sleeps, we can. It is vain that you rise up early, that you go late to rest, that you eat the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Now let me balance this for just a moment. That same fourth commandment that said in Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 12 that we're to observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, also said this, 6 days you shall labor. Ask a lady if labor's hard work. Labor. You will be burdened. You will cultivate. You will toil. You will do all your work. You will apply your skill, use your time, fulfill your occupation. There's no room here for laziness. But then there needs to be rest. There must be rest. 2 Timothy 2:15, be diligent, do your best, work hard, concentrate to present yourself approved to God, a worker, not a slacker, who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. In the Greek, that word worker simply means workman, but in the Hebrew, it means a craftsman, a technician. It's a skill. He's a specialist. His work is tested and tried and approved over time. When we work, whether with our hands or our heads, we engage in a noble activity. We reflect the image of a God who works. But we began our existence at rest. We begin our day with rest. We're called to begin our week with rest. Are you getting your rest? Is God trustworthy? Does he invite me to trust him, or am I to trust my own capacity? Is the spiritual manna that he provides sufficient for what he calls me to do, or do I need to get more than he gives? Does everything depend on you? Does everything depend on me? Or can we trust God to multiply the few loaves and fishes that he gives us? No, we cannot sit back and do nothing. Neither should we try to do everything. We sow, we water, but we recognize it's God who gives the increase. God's blessing multiplies our efforts in a way that no amount of extra hours or efforts ever could. Yes, we work diligently and carefully, but the setbacks and the problems and the disappointments are tests of our trust in our all-sufficient God. As one lady said, can you drop the bucket of what God's called you to carry into the well of his grace and let go of the handle? That's good. And by the way, if you don't like working with the fellowship, I'm looking for a youth pastor, an associate pastor, very soon a senior pastor. Thank you. The Lord bless you. God bless you in the work you do. God bless us in the work we do. But God bless us even more as we seek him and let him do the work through us. Thank you.